Hey there, this is Renessa Boley Layne, and I want to welcome you to another conversation on creating your perfect work. If you follow me, then you know it is my life's mission to equip you to discover, design, and get highly paid to do work you love, whether that means radically changing careers, launching a business, or bringing your big idea to life. So today's conversation is on how to network like a pro and build community. So I'm going to stop you right there because I want to make sure that you are clear on why you have got to be all in on this conversation. Here is why we're having this conversation today. If you are an individual contributor in your career, then you need what we're about to talk about. If you are leading a group of people and you're trying to escalate in your leadership, you need to know what we're talking about today. If you're an entrepreneur and you want to build a business based on events and community and connection, then you need to just drop everything because this is what you need here today. So this is not about networking. It is about how do you build a network that can catapult your success and open doors that will help you to get highly paid doing work that you love. And so no matter where you are on the perfect work spectrum, even if you are the strongest introvert on the planet, what you're going to learn today is a tool that you need in your arsenal to really be able to do what you want to do at a much higher level for much better income with much greater ease. And we all just want things to go easier, right? So the beautiful woman who is sharing the screen with me today is Emily Merrill. Am I pronouncing your last name correctly? Is that right?
You nailed it. Yep, you got it right.
Emily is founder of 6 Degrees Society, and she is lovingly known as quote unquote 20 questions, and you're going to find out why as we go through the conversations. But Emily launched 6 Degrees in 2014, and she launched it as a side hustle. So woot woot to all the side hustles in her flagship city of New York City. But since 2016, she has taken that business into a full-time, full-grown community into 10 chapters. And so she's got chapters all across the country: New York City, Chicago, LA, New Orleans, San Francisco, Miami, DC, which is my former place of that I called home, Boston, Philly. And she's hosted over 5,000 women and has partnered with such brands as Ann Taylor, Parker, and Kendra Scott. And what I love, that's all the formal stuff. So you know that, she's bad. She does what she does and she's really good at it. But let me tell you why I'm super excited to have Emily and what I love about her work. So Emily gets to the heart of what connection is all about, right? And she takes the fear and the ego and the anxiety out of connecting with people in a way that makes all the difference in how we build relationships. And I really love that. And I wanted Emily on this series because this ain't my strong suit. Like, I'm an only child, I'm a military kid. I have a great reputation and I have a good, network, but building community and really leveraging that to catapult my business, that's an area where I'm like, man, I can really grow in that area. So I'm, as much as y'all are gonna be taking notes, I'm gonna be sitting here like, things that I get to implement in the next level of work that I do. And so I'm excited to have her here. Thank you for taking the time. I know that the women who are listening in are going to be so blessed by your story and all that you're doing and all of your expertise, but we just want to welcome you, Emily, to the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me here. And it's always so weird to hear about myself or an introduction about myself. So thank you for the kind introduction. And networking is my passion. So where you were just talking about being a military kid, I was the person who was probably making friends with the military kid. I love unpacking people's stories and understanding what makes them tick and just getting to the root of like who a person is beyond the fluff of what they do. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome, and we're going to dive on in. Can you turn up your volume just a little bit? Because you were louder before, and then somehow I think we lost you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
It's a little bit better, yep.
A little bit better. I can do built-in again if that's easier.
Let's try built-in because it sounds like you're just a little bit distant.
Farther away? Okay, perfect.
And this is awesome because we get to be authentic. So you know that the stuff she's talking about is on the dome.
Yeah, and you guys get to hear the cars driving by. You get to hear the pizza being made in the oven behind me. You get to hear my husband eating. This is quarantine, people.
This is quarantine. So obviously this whole series is about creating your perfect work. And when we talk about perfect work, we're not talking about perfection. We're not talking about, there's no risk or there's no challenge or that there's no aggravation. When I'm talking about perfect work, I mean that you are doing the career business that that you were put on this planet to do, and you're having the impact and the contribution that is meaningful and fulfilling to you. That is what perfect work is. And so as you think about the work that you're doing now, Emily, in all of its evolution, how do you know that that work now is in line with your perfect work?
So what I knew about, when I started my company, it was started by accident. It was something that I was doing in the background. I was always introducing people to other individuals. I was always helping people make connections with one another. And I didn't realize it was my perfect work until my community actually told me it was my perfect work. Wow. It was the people around me that pushed me to the ledge where I was the one who ultimately had to figure out, am I going to jump or am I not going to jump? Yep. And am I going to keep kind of not remembering or not understanding that this is my mission in life and this is my exactly where I'm supposed to be. So with my company, I always joke that, I don't joke, but I do joke that it was like an accidental invention, because when something comes naturally to you, it's hard for you to accept it as something that you can monetize. And it's also hard to accept it as something that you feel good monetizing. And I think that's something that I've found, especially building community and helping my clients build their own communities. When something becomes natural to you, you just assume that you should be giving it away for free. Yeah. Because it's so easy. And so for me, networking was one of those things where I never felt like it was intimidating. I never felt like it was a job. I never felt like it was something that was a chore to do, which I know is a word that a lot of people associate to networking and same with tedious. And rather, I just felt really, really connected to the people that I was meeting and felt really aligned in what I was doing. So,
I love that you say that, because you're absolutely right. A lot of times I'll share with people what's common to you, you don't realize is uncommon outside of you. You don't realize that people would pay you for it, that they would want to sit down and learn from you in whatever that thing happens to be. And it's not always this big, like, you don't have to be a neuroscientist, or neurosurgeon.
They're not scared to charge their worth.
They're not scared to charge anybody, right? But it doesn't even have to be like that rocket science, right? That's something that you do just so naturally, brilliantly, can be the very thing that is a clue to your perfect work. And so I'm really glad that you said it that way. But I'm curious, first of all, tell folks what 6 Degrees Society is all about first, and then how did it come about, since it was this accidental kind of project, but give them some background there.
For sure. For first, if you can say 6 Degrees Society 3 times fast, you win a prize. Yeah. It's really hard. You can shorten it to SDS if you want to make it easier. It came about, or what it is exactly, it's a female-focused networking organization. So as you heard, we started in real life in New York City, and we expanded to 10 cities across the country. And then thanks to Corona and, beautiful pandemic that we're going through, is we've been able to pivot our offerings to virtual. So in the past few months, we've hosted about 20 events per month, and we've been able, about an event a day, and we've been able to connect individuals across the country and some individuals across the world. And it has been so extraordinary, because I've been collecting these individuals for the last few years, and to have my favorite people in all different cities being able to connect is like a networking dream. To be able to not have to just send email intros and hope that they hop on a phone call, but for them to actually be in the same virtual room is very cool. So at 6 Degrees Society, what we do is we handpick who you meet while networking. So what that means is at every event, you get all of the attendees' bios, pictures, job titles, companies, and emails sent to you in advance, and I pre-match who you meet. So you meet 2 people for 15 minutes each, and if you're doing it via Zoom, we utilize the breakout rooms. And then we go into programming, and programming will be a fireside chat, a moderated panel, a workshop, presentation, a workout class. But it's something that touches on personal, professional, and lifestyle development. So that's what 6 Degrees is all about. And then to answer your second question was, how did it come to be, or how did it come to be?
Yeah.
Ooh, we've got Alexa going off in the background. This is real life, people. You're getting real
Alexa,
things.
Turn off the timer.
Pizza's on its way, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, this is just like real life television. It's like a reality TV show. So 6 Degrees Society started, I always say that I'm a people collector. I'm similar to you. I moved around a lot as a kid, specifically schools. And when we were younger, my parents were kind of like the Goldilocks with all the schools. This school's, the kids are too snotty. This school's on 95 and too far away. This school's just right, but we're going to move you to a different state. And I was always that new girl when you go into a school, and the first day in school, you walk into a cafeteria and you pray that someone just says, come over here, come sit over here.
Yeah.
And your heart drops and you're relieved because someone hopefully waves you over. And so, you know, I always took notice of the new girls, and I would always wave them over and make sure that they were invited in. And then fast forward through life, I was able to collect these friendships that I developed across all the schools and college and living abroad. And I loved bringing those people together because similar to what I said about the virtual rooms, these people would never be in a room together. I think it's really important that you need to be outside of your own circle. So like, you're working in fashion, you shouldn't just be meeting only people exclusive in fashion. And same with finance. So in New York City, I started a little supper club, and I would take all those people I'd collected that ended up in New York, and I created an Excel sheet, and I came up with all the different themes that we would be cooking, and then people would then, they would then host them at their house. And I would realize as people were making connections, they weren't bragging about themselves. And I'd be like, oh my God, Renessa, did you just tell them about your amazing thing that you just accomplished? And you're like, no, we were talking about The Bachelor. I was like, what? This is so frustrating. You're amazing. She's amazing. Y'all should connect on a deeper level. So I realized that the long story long, is the problem that I found about these types of gatherings were people would then associate everyone there that I invited as my friend. And they didn't feel comfortable taking to the relationship to the next level, or the friendship to the next level. And so I needed to create a more neutral space where people could come in and they can be friends of friends, but in this ground, they're neutral. So anyone that they connect with there, they can walk away and connect with further. So long story long, 6 Degrees Society developed out of like this human experiment that I had, where if people wrote their bios and it gave them a chance to brag about themselves pre-event, would that come up more naturally in conversation? And also being in a space where people would be able to continue relationships beyond that space.
Perfect. So there's two things I really want to pull out of what Emily said for those that are listening. So part of the beauty of doing this interview series, and one of my intentions was I wanted thought leaders who could teach us things that we needed to know about getting highly paid to do work we love. But I wanted to highlight organizations that I believe they're a force for good that women need to know about, need to subscribe to, need to become members of. And 6 Degrees Society is one of those. Because again, lots of these major cities, there's a chapter there, and they're continuing to grow. So if you're in DC, Philly, San Francisco, any of those places, y'all need to be Googling how to find a chapter, in part because, especially if networking is not your strong suit, but that's not the point. The point is being able to connect and being able to build relationships. And what's awesome about what they do is that they match you with people who would actually be really good fits. It's like Match.com for networking. And so how cool is that, to then be able to start to build some of these relationships that then again allow you to have a strong network, not just a ton of people on your LinkedIn or a ton of people on your Facebook that you still don't have any kind of relationship currency with. So I highly encourage you, and we'll talk a little bit about it at the end of the interview, to make sure that you tap into this organization, because I think they're doing something super cool, super interesting, and really, really beneficial. That being said, pay attention to her story. Because I share this often when folks are trying to find their sweet spot, like, what is that thing that I'm supposed to do? What does my perfect work look like? It's often an intersection between what you do best, what you enjoy most, your story, and then what the market is willing to pay for. Like Emily has a story, the whole, moving from school to school, always being the new girl. Like that story was a clue to what her perfect work would look like. Like now she gets the person that welcomes in the new girl, welcomes in and creates an environment of belonging, right? And that story, just her sharing that message, everybody that comes in contact with her is like nodding their head. There's money in her message. And so I share that because for some of you that are listening in, you might think that your perfect work is so far out there in the stratosphere. It's not. Pay attention to your story because there's a clue there, and then go figure out how to monetize that bad boy, whether it's in a career or business. So getting back to the whole building of the network, help us understand what are some of the mindsets that people have when it comes to networking, and I'll call it building a network because I think networking might be a trigger for some people. But what are some of the limiting beliefs or misconceptions that people have around building their network that does not serve them, that then has them not doing what's necessary to be able to really take advantage in that way?
The next step. So one of the things that I think about that I think the limiting beliefs might be is that the fear of rejection.
Yep.
That the moment they tell their network what they're doing, their network's going to say, thanks for telling me, but I'm not interested.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of actually telling their network what they're doing, and I talk about network in the sense that it is the Facebook that you've been creating and cultivating over the last 10 years that Facebook's been around, longer than that, I think.
Yeah.
Same thing with LinkedIn, like those are untapped networks.
Yeah.
So you've essentially been silently building your network, or as I say, it's important to build your network when you're not asking for anything and then tap it when you are. Yeah. So that's an important message to walk away with, is that once you have your flag ready to fly and you're ready to tell the world what your message is, sure, you're going to have a ton of people who don't care at all about what the heck you're doing.
Yeah.
But there might be that one or two or random person that you never expected would have an interest in your crystal business or your meditation training course or whatever it is that you are building, that has been silently lurking in the background and has been just waiting to be activated.
Yeah, yeah. And there is a mindset issue with it. And the reality is, I think Jack Canfield says it. He says, some will, some won't, so what, who cares? And the reality is, some will care about your dream, some won't. Some will want to advance and help you in your career, some won't. And that's just the way that it is. And oftentimes the no's are not some indictment on your values. Sometimes the no is just direction. The person who you thought was going to be the advocate or the best person to kind of carry the torch for you actually isn't. And so the no is a gift to you because you might have been going down a road that wasn't going to get you where you wanted to go. And so I think, especially when it comes to networking, we just have to have this mindset that some will, some won't. So what? And I've got to be unattached to how that plays out. And just because I give to Emily doesn't mean Emily's the one that's going to give back to me. I still got to give, but the give back might come from some completely sideways direction. Oops, I lost the earring. So having that mindset is really, really important. But so in this conversation, I wanted to take it from 3 different angles. I wanted to talk about, how do we build that network? Because for a lot of us, we need to know, where do we even start with that? Like, it's not just sending out friend requests or whatever, or taking business cards. Like, how do we build? Then how do you tap into the network? Because for a lot of you listening, you have a network of people, an army of folks who are willing to go to bat for you, and you've just not made the ask. So how do we begin to tap into that? And then lastly, how do we build community? Like, how do we build community from scratch, whether it's online or offline, and whether you're in a career or a business, having a community and learning how to cultivate community that's not just about you and what you get from it, but really cultivating a rich community where people are able to benefit from each other is a strategy that can carry you forward in so many ways. So let's start with how to build the network. School us. Step one, what do you do when you're green, you're fresh, you're trying to figure out, what to do?
So step one, be yourself and also tell everyone what you're doing. And the easiest thing that I say in terms of building a network is making it really easy for them to be a part of your network. So if that network is being a part of your newsletter, if the network is inviting them to an event, make the ask really, really, really easy and impossible to say no to. So for example, with 6 Degrees, whenever I meet someone, and rather than spending time on coffee or spending time like meeting beyond the place that we met, I always invite them to be my guest to an event. Mm-hmm. So by email, and the way that I do that, tactically in the moment meeting this person is I will take my phone out and I will email that person right then and there and say, hey, it was great meeting you. Code to sign up for an event, like be my guest. Mm-hmm. So then then the next step is that person has to sign up for an event. But once that person signs up for an event, that person's now on my mailing list. Mm-hmm. That person is now a part of my community. Now that person is getting all bombarded with all things 6 Degrees Society. And I just made them feel really special. And I think that's something to remember when networking, is that it's not about taking, it's about giving. Yeah. And I think that's a really, really important thought to go into networking with, rather than it feeling like a transaction, but rather that you're able to provide some sort of knowledge or some sort of resource to another person. So pre-networking, always compare. Oh, here's the beautiful neighborhood.
You're in San Francisco, right?
San Francisco? Yeah, I'm in San Francisco.
Well, this is city living, y'all. That's city living.
The beauty of living 2 blocks from a fire station. They're here really quickly, but they're here every single day, just going up and down. So yeah, so coming prepared with a give, coming to an event like ready to rock and roll with something. The other thing that I give people is I don't believe in business cards anymore. So I give them a pop socket. So I actually made branded pop sockets with 6 Degrees in it. Have you ever seen a pop socket?
Well, I've seen it, but but I never thought about it. Yeah.
So, it's the same price as a business card. Business cards are expensive. They're something that are thrown away like the moment that you meet a person. So I created a pop socket. So it's something that people can use. It's a brand builder and a network builder. It's also a question asker. So someone who doesn't know what a pop socket is goes, what's that? And then a whole story comes behind it. Yep. So how to build a network is always come prepared with a give. You are already sitting on a network that you have yet to tap. So when you are looking to build a network from your already existed network, you have to make sure that you have a call to action. Mm-hmm. I think it's really, really important to utilize that call to action across all of your platforms and make it easy for people to share whatever that call to action is. Mm-hmm. So one of my favorite hacks there is when I'm launching in a new city, is I'll identify a few women that I think are like great ambassadors for that city. And they might not have to be actual ambassadors for our company, but they're like actual great ambassadors for that city. And what I'll do is I'll write them an email, and then I'll pre-write an email for them to send out to their communities. Mm-hmm. And the email has all of the call to actions in it, all the links to book an event, to follow us on LinkedIn, to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, so on and so forth. But I make the work easy for the person to do. So how many times has everyone here has had that opportunity to like connect you to someone? Yeah. And if it feels like a lift, you probably won't do it. But if they wrote the email, included their resume, and like rewrote their email and subject line in it, I have no reason not to.
Yep. Yeah.
So when building a network, think about it the same way you would ask someone for a job or like an intro to someone. Is make it really, really, really easy for them to share your message. And then the last piece of advice in building a network is, if you do get rejected or people say no or they don't respond, that's not you that they're saying no to, just like what you were saying about Jack Dorsey. It's more, it's your alter ego. Like Beyonce is not Beyonce when she gets on stage, she's Sasha Fierce. Yeah. And so being able to like switch your mindset that they're not rejecting Emily, they're rejecting like Amelia, the power networker. That's okay. And so if you ever hear a no when building your network, which for the most part you won't, that's okay too. That means there's more yeses out there for you.
Yeah, yeah. There's a couple things that I like about what you said. One, I think the creativity. Think of ways to be memorable. Like all of you, and Emily used examples that work well in her business. And so the question may be, well, I don't have a business. I don't have an event to invite somebody to, kind of thing. So we'll roll back on some of those. But from a creativity standpoint, all of you listening in have gone to conferences, you go to happy hours, you go to networking events, you go to the Chamber of Commerce or whatever. You do things where typically you'll give out a business card, and to her point, those things either get thrown away or they get put in a desk drawer, or unless there's this instant connection and there's an immediate collaboration that's happening, nothing really becomes of it, right? Mm-hmm. Think of creative ways that you can have a leave back that now is very different. Like I remember there was a time when instead of having a business card, on the back of the business card, I used to have like these kind of inspirational quotes or thoughts to live by or those kinds of things. And because the coach had suggested that at some point. And I created cards like that so that people didn't throw away the card, they'd actually keep the quote. And I remember a couple years later, I ran into someone, I'd only met her once, and she was like, I still have your card pinned on my desk. I see it every day, right? And so we still, like I could literally send an email to her today or a LinkedIn to her today and ask her for anything. And it's because our relationship was kind of fostered through this thing of mine that she saw every day. So even when years went by, it was like, oh, I'm totally connected to her, right? And it was just a little thing. So y'all could steal that idea too. But the point is, find something that makes it a little bit different that allows you to be memorable. But going back to the issue around, or the suggestion around like giving something or inviting people to something, what if you are a career person and maybe you don't have events that you can invite someone to or whatnot? How should they begin to think about being in the process of service for a new person that they have met?
I would put a plan in place the moment you meet the person, especially if it's someone that you want to see again or if you want to actually work with. I would put a plan into place that night. So similarly, I'm going to use golden retrievers as an example. So like say we're talking about golden retrievers where you like both have golden retrievers and we hit it off, we have golden retrievers, an easy thing to keep the ball rolling, and you failed at getting like a plan in place, you don't have a coffee, you don't have anything to look forward to with this person, is you can follow up and send them an email and be like, this was the article I was telling you about, golden retrievers. Yeah. And so now for whatever reason, their brain is going to completely think of you and the golden retriever girl. Yeah. And they'll think of you when you have that thing in common. And for me as a networker, I really find it important to humanize myself. Yeah. Like most people always tell me, they're like, well, you feel like a friend first, and then like we do business together, and it didn't feel scary, it didn't feel like intimidating to join forces. Well, a lot of times when you go to networking events, you can feel the energy of the person, and it feels like they have a sales quota they have to meet, or they're desperately looking for a job. So again, like even if you don't have something to offer that person, but you know that there's like a spark. And networking is a lot like dating. Like you feel it. You feel that energy with that person that you want to see them again. Yeah. So find I love doing the phone thing and just grabbing my phone, opening up a browser, be like, put your email in here, and then emailing them that night. And then the ball's in their court, and then they can come back to you. Or just following up, having it saved in your phone, and then following up later that night and being like, here's that article I mentioned. Yeah. And so you make it easy.
The point that you make about kind of your come from, your motive, that's critical, because people can smell when somebody has an agenda, right? Yeah. And even though you might have an agenda, like you might be in a place where you're like, yo, I'm looking for work, I need a new job, or I'm looking for clients or whatnot. That could be your personal agenda, but in that instance with that person, they getting to know them and connecting to their need has to trump your need, because otherwise you'll never get your need met. As they say, you give people what they want, they'll give you what you want. And so learning in those conversations to, Emily's 20 questions, and so maybe she can give us some suggestions on what those questions can be. But really spending your time getting to know the person on the other end, as opposed to trying to impress the person on the other end to say, that you're enough, right? Yeah. So 20 questions. Do you have any like examples of just like literally basic questions that people can ask that really kind of open up a conversation so that it becomes much more authentic, even when it's with a stranger.
So you are crushing your networking game today just with what you're wearing. And I always tell people, wear something that's conversation starting. Wear something that's bold. Wear something that's beautiful. I mean, these earrings don't look as good on virtual, but I usually wear like a big red, big dangly red earrings and a bold red lip. And people, I get more compliments.
Your pictures are that, your brand photos?
Yeah, that's like very much my signature. I had a lipstick on earlier in my event 2 hours before. But yeah, so it's like signature looks that people come to expect. Oh, I know, I saw your bio. Of course you're wearing a red lip. Like, it's an easy thing to comment on. But for women, I think there's a lot of, I've found, at least running a women's organization, is that women are intimidated by other women.
Yeah.
And there's this like, oh, she's so chic, she's so beautiful, she's not going to want to be my friend, she's not going to, I'm nothing compared to her.
Yep.
So push that aside first and foremost and start the conversation. Like, you are the one, she's probably just as nervous as you are, so be the first person to make the move. So yes, I always like to say, utilize social cues, like utilize the earrings, the lipstick. Also, social cues can be like, I have a picture of our wedding on here. So if someone has their phone in their hand and you see a picture and you're like, is that your wedding? It's a good conversation starter. Or a picture of a kid, a picture of a dog. Same thing with colleges. Like, if you're at a place where maybe someone's wearing like a college hat, or they have like a Yankees hat on, that's a social cue to pick up on. And you can be like, oh, are you a Yankees fan? Are you from New York? I'm from New York. And you can kind of fast track that commonality that you have. But I highly recommend connecting on a commonality, and helping people see that you're human before you go into whatever sales pitch you might have prepared with.
Absolutely. A great question that someone, so complimenting, this is basically what you're saying, like, find something about that person that you can edify and go there with them, because people love to feel edified. They love to feel good, and it doesn't matter where they are and whether you think they're above you, beneath you, whatnot. People love to be encouraged. There's someone I interviewed for my Fast Lane Wrong Direction book, and one of the things he said was, he's like, when I go into conversations like this, I always will tell people right off the bat, oh my gosh, I hate superficial conversations. So I really want to get to know you. Tell me like one big, passionate, audacious goal that you want to accomplish before the end of the year. And he'll ask that question. Like, he's already set the stage. He's like, he's gotten buy-in and agreement. Like, okay, let's get beyond the chit chat. Let's get beyond the niceties. And like he says it, he puts it out there, right? And then the other person's always like, oh, thank you, because I don't want, superficial stuff either. And then he goes into asking, what's like one big, passionate, audacious goal you want to accomplish before the end of the year? It's now mid-year or whatever time it is. Like, that turns people's minds onto something that's super important to them. And what they come back with may have nothing to do with work, but it is going to be important to them. They might say something like, I want to run a 5K, or I'm training to run this Ironman, or they might have something with their kid, or they may have some work goal or whatever. But whatever they say is the thing that's important to them. And then that's the thing that, to Emily's point, you can then follow up on. Like, oh my gosh, I saw this article about, 3 things you need to do before you run a 5K. I thought it might be interesting to you, kind of thing. So then your give is for something that they want, as opposed to giving them something that they're like, this ain't got nothing to do with me.
Well, on that point too, if you're scared to ask the audacious question thing, is ask how you know the host, if there's a hostess.
Great one.
I think that's always a really easy one. And then the other thing is, what brings you joy?
Yeah.
And giving people permission to be like, what does bring me joy?
Yeah, it'll take them back. It'll take them back. Like, because so many of us are so busy, and we're so busy. Your mind is on all the stuff you have to do, that those kinds of questions that get people to stop, to put their guard down, and to really show you the authentic person that they are with their real desires, like, that's a cementer in a great way. So hopefully some of these questions will get, like, just anchor onto one of them and practice that one. But that's really great. So then let's migrate to now, how do you tap into that network? So you've practiced some of the things we've been talking about. You're starting to connect with people. You're starting to give to them. How do you begin to tap into that network when you need them?
You give them an offer. So if you're trying to sell them, it depends what you want to accomplish. But if you have an offer, this is your time when you sell to them, and you've proven your goodwill. So now you can sell and invite them to that thing that you want them to buy tickets for, or you can let them know about that mastermind that you're hosting, or you can always frame it too. Like, I am hosting a mastermind. I thought of you first and foremost. Or do you have any friends that you think would be available for this mastermind? And you can activate them as little micro ambassadors to spread the goodwill for you. I think it's also, as we said earlier, it's just being really clear what your ask is. If you do need something of them, be cognizant of their time, be cognizant of how you communicate it to them. Are you going to communicate it to them via text message or email or LinkedIn? I hate more than anything. I've got like 17 unread Facebook messages right now, and I hate it. But I'm so guilty of totally utilizing it when I need something, but I hate it when I receive something there. So but be cognizant of, like, if that person never responds on LinkedIn message, but always does to email, like, that's the way that you communicate with that person. Or maybe ask them, like, how can I share information with you in the future? That would be easier. So that's what I would say. I would say, just be really clear with what you want your ask to be of that person and how to activate it. So I had someone yesterday email me. She's like, I saw you're connected with the founder of the Skim on LinkedIn. I've met her once on a phone call. Am I comfortable enough making an email connection for her? No, but I told her that, and I gave her suggestions of other people I know. The dog is now finished being walked. You're getting a play-by-play of my day. This is
got his mask on.
He's got his mask on. He walked the dog. She was a good dog. He made lunch. It's perfect. But yeah, so I'd be really clear with the ask, and always have an ask available to you. That's something that I didn't learn until a few years in my business. Was whenever you're going to meet new people, or when you're talking, or you're hosting events. And one of my biggest frustrations, even when some of our speakers are hosting, I send out a recap email and I'm like, what special offer or what, like, self-promotion do you want? This is your chance. And a lot of them are like, oh, you can give them my email and they'll connect. Thank you. Give them my email and they'll connect. I'm like, no, this is your moment to shine. This is your moment to actually ask, like, 20% off or whatnot. So have that offer prepared in advance.
Yeah, I think that's gold. That's a writer downer, folks, because you're right, Emily. There's so many times, because here's the thing, when you offer to help somebody, like, well, how can I support you with this? They may tell you what they want. 9 times out of 10, they're going to turn the conversation on you and say, is there something I can help you with? And it's surprising how many times people are like, well, they can't think of anything, right? Because you haven't really thought about it. And I have been in that situation, in the past. And sometimes if I'm in that situation, I'm like, right now I don't need anything specific, but can I come back to you on X, because I'm going to be working on some things and you might be able to support me. So I'll leave that door open if I don't want to just throw out something that's meaningless, right? 100%. But I think it's really important, because most of us don't think about what our need is. And so then when the opportunity's there, you don't get to take advantage of it because you haven't thought about the need. So what she said there is a writer downer. Making it really easy, and you mentioned this earlier, I think, Emily, making it really easy for people to support you, especially if you're asking for a recommendation, if you're asking for an introduction, if you're asking, if you have business and you're asking for a testimonial, like, do the scripting. Make it easy for someone to be like, yeah. So if I'm ever asking for a connection, I'll first get the person's buy-in that they'll do the connection. And then in my communication, I will always say, to make it easier for you, I've taken a stab at how you can communicate this. You can literally just copy it and paste, or change it in whatever way you want to fit your needs, right? And every time they're like, thank you. And literally they will take it, copy, paste it, or forward, and it's done. When you don't do that, people who are so well-intentioned will take 2 weeks to get to your stuff, not because they don't want to help you, because now they have to think about what to say. Yes. And they're like, oh my gosh, well, how do I describe her? Or what do I, and then it just goes on the pile. So if people are not helping you, if your network is, not forwarding your resume or not making the connection or not, opening you up to clients, it's 9 times out of 10 because it's too hard for them to do it.
Yes, I completely. And same with Instagram too. I think a lot of people, when they're like, can you share it on your stories? I'm like, can you tag me in your stories and make it easier for me to share? Yep. And yes, I will, rather than me like creating something beautiful in Canva and uploading it.
Exactly. So for social media, tagging people on your LinkedIn, tagging people on your Instagram, and then literally they can just then be the endorser for you. That kind of stuff is critical, right? So that's really, 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 really in terms of
fly that flag. Seriously, fly that flag. And then also think of like an evergreen offering as well. So if you have nothing big, like what you said, you're like, I don't have a big ask for you. What could be like an evergreen ask that you have? Like, I'm constantly looking for podcast speakers.
Exactly.
Or like awesome women to interview for my blog posts. And so they're like, oh, people love an assignment.
Yeah,
they love being told what to do, and they love being given direction. People can't help you if you don't give them direction, because then that's overstepping. So they want to help you when they have been given direction.
Yep. The other thing that I found, and Emily, you can weigh in on it, or you may or may not agree, I don't know, but I always give people an out. Like the little hack that I use, if I'm asking for someone for something, if I'm asking them to make an introduction or whatnot, I'll always at the end, I will give them an out, and I'll say, this would be a great help to me, but only do so if it feels good to you. If it doesn't, no obligations. I would not be in any way offended, right? Yes. And it does two things. One, it takes the pressure off. So if they really want to say no, then it gives them the opportunity to say no. But then on the other end, it's kind of a double-edged sword in a good way, because they're like, oh, I can't say no. Like, it's nice. Like the fact that you gave them the out, they're like, well, of course I'm going to do it, right? It's because then they don't feel like they're being imposed. They feel like you've actually considered them. And so I say that it's a little hack, and it's probably psychological, but I find that in putting that in there, people are so much more inclined, especially when you feel like you're asking someone to go above and beyond for you. Just put it out there. If it doesn't feel good, it's totally fine. I would so not be offended. So only accept if you're good, right? Yeah. Whatever kind of language, but it works like a charm. So,
I completely agree. I do that a lot.
So then as we start to wrap up, let's get into how to build community. Like, how do you begin to, whether it's offline, whether it's online, how do you start to build a community where people that are associated with you are also associated with one another? Because you've been able to do that in a great way. And so I'd love to learn how you even begin to think about that.
So first and foremost, I built it backwards, and I built it accidentally. I started with that one event that led to monthly events that led to more and more. And I had a Google Doc with everyone's emails, and I would BCC email everyone. That was it. I was so simple. I was like, this is so cool. I'm like a secret society newsletter event company. And then someone told me about MailChimp. I had never heard of MailChimp before. There's more options than MailChimp out there, if people don't know. But so then I finally had a destination for people to go. So I was building the CRM system and having people, when they signed up for an event, it went to my MailChimp. And then what I recognized is that the community shouldn't stop once the event stops. They need a destination to kind of hang out, like a virtual lounge of sorts. So that's where I chose Facebook, and I created a big 6 Degrees Society Facebook community for many reasons. One, I wanted to be able to utilize that Facebook group to ask them questions, to get feedback on upcoming events. I send out an annual survey every single year in that Facebook group. And 2, I wanted a place where people could not have to be in the formalized space of an event, ask each other questions, and also promote to one another. So one of the challenges that I had was that people saw now my website, my newsletter, and they saw an opportunity, and people would ask if I could promote their upcoming event or their upcoming program or their upcoming whatever, their apartment that's for lease, anything. I've literally had everything, dog sitting. And so I wanted to create a space that was like, it's curated space. These people are all 6 Degree Society people, but it lives virtually and they can do that there. So my Facebook group differs from other Facebook groups where it's not like Motivation Monday, like Shout Out Tuesday. It's more of a space where people can then come and they can like self-promote each other. They can tag each other and learn from one another.
Got it. And so think about this, because as you're listening to Emily, you might think, well, I don't have a real need to build that kind of community. Like, why do I want to cultivate that? Yeah. Well, think about it. If you are leading a team, if you're leading a team of folks, there are all kinds of ways that people can communicate, together. That's not just me sending an email or this or that. Like, for instance, my husband he and his buddies from college, they've been knowing each other 25 years, and they have this little thread. And I don't know how many guys are on the thread, but they're on that thread. I'm like, do any of y'all work? I mean, you've got surgeons and attorneys, and I'm like, do y'all work? They're on that thread. But it's a community. And they talk about everything from investing to, what's going on in terms of current events to their kids. Like, it's a way for them just to be able to connect. And even if you're not responding to it every day because you work, and you're still caught up on people's lives and stuff like that. So even as you think about this, just from the relationships that you want to foster professionally, there may be a way of connecting some of those people together in a dialogue, right? If you're leading a team, there may be a way of connecting your team such that when there's wins that have nothing to do with the specific deliverable, people can actually connect to each other. If you are coach, trainer, that kind of thing, bring your coaching members together on a platform. It could be a social media group. It could just be a group email where they're able to then, send questions to each other. So you're not the person who's always the bottleneck around being the point person to connect, but the value isn't you. The value is the community, but yet you then get associated with that value. So when your friends strike a deal together, the person that gets that credit is you because you introduced them, right? And it was like, oh my gosh, Renessa, thank you so much. Or Emily, thank you so much. But Sarah was great, right? Yeah. And now you get currency for having made and brokered that connection around those people. And it's little ways. Like, I remember when we got married, my husband and I got married, and we got married in the Bahamas. And so we did a kind of little destination wedding, and he's, we're really blessed because he's got a great crew of friends, and I have, really quality people, like good folks, and so we were like, we just want good people to meet good people. And so we brought them together, and we created situations where it wasn't just y'all coming to our wedding and da-da-dee. It was really, we wanted them to connect and do different things. They became friends outside of us. And there would be things that would happen. Oh, well, so-and-so connected with so-and-so, and they went off. I'm sorry, I didn't get the invite. Where'd y'all go? Like, no. But the value in that community was, and so it was just value in the community that was created. So I say all that to say that when you want to start tapping into a network, you being able to connect good people to good people and finding a creative way to do that, you can benefit and reap the benefit of that relationship currency. And we don't think about that when it comes to creating our perfect work. We think about do my job, do it well, deliver to my client. We think about us, but really community is just another way to give. And you can find all kinds of ways in big and small to create community that then you have made deposits into that you can make withdrawals. Does that make sense?
Exactly what I said.
Capture it?
Yes, you captured it perfectly.
Yay!
Nailed it. You're hired.
There we go. So that being said, we're going to begin to wrap up this conversation, but my hope is that it scratched an itch with you to begin to kind of get out of the clouds and really start to think practically. How can I connect more with people on a regular basis? How can I build relationship currency so that then I can tap in and ask? Because a closed mouth doesn't get fed. And 9 times out of 10, someone's got something that will make it so much easier for you to hit your goal. Someone has a connection to a mentor, someone has a connection to an app, or somebody has a connection to just something that you should know that's going to get you where you want to go. And if you have deposited into them, it is so much easier for you to then make a request. And it's not about how often, I'm connecting to you. It's about the quality of my engagement with you, and the authenticity and the genuineness. Because when you're good people, like, okay, Emily's good people. If I don't talk to Emily for another 6 months, she can knock on my door, come, whenever, and be like, hey, do you know blah, 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 and it's done. Why? Because we've had a quality engagement. She's good, folks. I believe in her work. And there's a genuine desire to be able to give, right? And so my hope is that this has been helpful to you. But that being said, Emily's got something to give. So
shocking. Well, I have pop sockets for anyone that can find me in person.
So we'll let you talk about that, and then we'll talk about how they can get access to it.
I'll close the door. My husband's on the calls now. Hold on, sorry. Oh gosh. So I would love to invite all of you to join one of our virtual events. We are hosting virtually probably for the rest of this year, and then we'll reevaluate what in real life looks like. So please join as my guest. Use code virtual SDS at checkout. And I would love to hear from you, and I would love to hear your story. I'm also a business coach, and I love helping solopreneurs grow their business through membership, through communities, through partnerships. So if you have any questions about starting that and just want to pick my brain for 30 minutes, shoot me a note, and I'm happy to schedule that. So that is my gift.
Yep. So you guys will see a link for that at the bottom of this, at the bottom of the video. So take advantage of it. Get on her mailing list, follow her stuff, learn from her, because at just the right time, she might be the perfect person to be able to catapult you to the next place, whether it's in your career or your business. And so it has been an absolute honor to include you in this conversation. Thank you for all your expertise, Emily. And on behalf of Emily and myself, we just want to wish you guys every success and happiness. Have an amazing day. Go crush it. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.